The heavy oak doors of the grand cathedral groaned as they were pushed open, a sound that seemed to echo like a gavel strike in the silence of the sanctuary. Ifeoma froze. The air inside smelled of expensive lilies and old money, a suffocating perfume that made her stomach turn. Hundreds of heads turned in unison, a sea of pastel silks and dark suits shifting to inspect the late arrivals. This was the wedding of the season. The union of the Hansei group's youngest daughter and the man who had promised to love Ifeoma until the day he died. That was until he realized love didn't pay the bills quite like a corporate merger did. Ifeoma's hand trembled violently at her side. She wanted to turn around. She wanted to run back to the parking lot, kick off these glass slippers that were pinching her toes, and drive until the city was a speck in her rearview mirror. But she couldn't. Not when Minho was standing at the altar, looking so smug, so victorious. Then, she felt it. A warmth engulfing her cold, shaking hand. A large, calloused hand wrapped around hers, firm and grounding. Chin up, a deep voice rumbled beside her, low enough that only she could hear. If you faint, I'm not carrying you out. It would wrinkle my suit. Ifeoma looked up at the man beside her. He was tall, impossibly so, with sharp, aristocratic features carved from cold marble and eyes that seemed to hold a thunderstorm behind the iris. He wore a tuxedo that fit him with the kind of precision that suggested it cost more than Ifeoma's entire college education. She didn't know his name. Well, she knew his name was Jin-woo because she had asked him last night between shots of tequila, but she didn't know him. She didn't know why a man who looked like he owned the city had agreed to be the fake date of a weeping, broken woman he met in a dive bar. I can't do this, Ifeoma whispered, her voice cracking. Everyone is staring. They know. They all know he dumped me for her. Jin-woo didn't look at the crowd. He looked straight ahead at the altar, his expression bored, almost predatory. Let them stare, he said, his thumb brushing over her knuckles in a rhythm that was strangely soothing. They aren't staring because they pity you, Ifeoma. They're staring because they are trying to figure out why the CEO of Kang Industries is holding your hand. Ifeoma blinked, her mind foggy with adrenaline. Kang Industries? Before she could process the information, he pulled her forward. He didn't walk, he glided, commanding the space with an aura of absolute authority. The whispers started immediately, rippling through the pews like a wildfire. Is that President Kang? What is he doing here? I thought he was in Europe. Who is that woman? Is that the ex? Minho, standing at the altar in his white tuxedo, looked as if he had seen a ghost. His smug smile faltered, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated panic. He took a half-step back, nearly tripping over the train of the bride's dress. Jin-woo leaned down, his lips brushing Ifeoma's ear, sending a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Smile, he commanded softly. You are the main character today. Act like it. Ifeoma forced her lips upward. As they walked down the aisle, the sound of her heels clicking on the marble floor felt like a countdown. She squeezed the stranger's hand, holding on to him like a lifeline in a storm. She didn't know that by the end of this hour, he would be much more than a lifeline. He would be the anchor that kept her from drowning, and the storm that would wash away everything she thought she knew about love. But to understand why a billionaire CEO was walking a heartbroken ghostwriter down the aisle of her ex-boyfriend's wedding, we have to rewind. We have to go back 24 hours, to the moment Ifeoma's world shattered into a million sharp pieces. Welcome to Afro-Korean Romance TV Besties, kindly show encouragement by hitting the like and subscribe button, it would mean a lot to me. The coffee shop was too bright. That was the first thing Ifeoma noticed. The fluorescent lights buzzed with a headache-inducing frequency, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Minho sat across from her, stirring his Americano with a level of concentration that suggested he was trying to dissolve a body rather than sugar. Say it again, Ifeoma said, her voice hollow. Minho sighed, dropping the spoon with a clatter. He looked annoyed, as if her heartbreak was a scheduling conflict he hadn't anticipated. I said, we need to break up, Ifeoma. It's not working. It hasn't been working for a long time. We were looking at apartments last week, Ifeoma pointed out, her hands gripping the edge of the table. You said you liked the one with the balcony because it had good light for my writing. I was being nice, Minho said, leaning back in his chair and crossing his arms. He wore the expensive watch Ifeoma had saved up for 6 months to buy him for his birthday. It glinted under the harsh lights, mocking her. Look, Ifeoma, let's be realistic. You're a dreamer. You write poems that nobody reads and ghostwrite memoirs for washed-up celebrities. That's cute when you're 22. But I'm 28. I'm an executive now. I need a partner who fits. Fits? Ifeoma repeated, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. You mean someone rich? Minho didn't flinch. I mean someone with ambition. Someone who understands the world I operate in. Eunji understands. The name landed like a physical blow. Eunji. The daughter of the Hansei Group chairman. Ifeoma knew her. Everyone knew her. She was beautiful, wealthy, and had the personality of a damp napkin, but she had a trust fund that could buy a small country. You're leaving me for Eunji? Ifeoma laughed, a dry, humorless sound. You used to make fun of her. You called her a walking ATM just 2 months ago. People change, Minho said coldly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a cream-colored envelope embossed with gold leaf. He slid it across the table. Ifeoma stared at it. What is this? An invitation, Minho said, checking his watch. Our wedding is tomorrow. The silence that followed was deafening. Ifeoma felt like the floor had opened up and swallowed her whole. Tomorrow? You've been planning a wedding while we were still together? It happened fast, Minho said, shrugging. It's a merger. But look, I want you to come. You want me to come to your wedding? To the woman you were cheating on me with. I wasn't cheating, Minho lied, his eyes shifting away. And yes, I want you to come. If you don't, people will talk. They'll say I ruined you. They'll paint me as the villain. I need you to show up, smile, and prove that we're cool. That you're not, bitter. Bitter? Ifeoma felt tears prickling her eyes, hot and humiliating. You destroy 5 years of my life, and you're worried I might look bitter? Just come, Ifeoma, Minho stood up, adjusting his suit jacket. Show me you have some dignity. Show me you can stand on your own 2 feet without leaning on me for once. Bring a date, if you can find one on such short notice. Though, let's be honest, who would you bring? He tossed a $20 bill on the table for the coffee he didn't drink. See you tomorrow. Don't be late. The ceremony starts at noon. He walked out, leaving Ifeoma sitting alone in the bright, buzzing coffee shop, the gold-embossed invitation staring up at her like a death sentence. She didn't scream. She didn't flip the table. She just sat there, feeling small, feeling plain, and feeling utterly unlovable. If you've ever felt like the world was crashing down on you, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We've all been Ifeoma at some point, and her story is just getting started. That night, the rain hammered against the windows of the Blue Note, a dimly lit jazz bar tucked away in an alleyway of the Gangnam district. It was the kind of place where people went to be alone together. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and the mournful sound of a saxophone. Ifeoma sat at the far end of the bar, a half-empty bottle of whiskey in front of her. She was soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her face, her mascara running in dark streaks down her cheeks. She looked like a tragedy, and she didn't care. She had the invitation on the bar counter, stabbing it repeatedly with a cocktail stick. I should burn it, she muttered to the bartender, who was wisely ignoring her. I should burn the whole church down. No, that's illegal. I should just show up in a funeral dress. Is that too dramatic? It's a bit cliché, a voice said from the shadows beside her. Ifeoma turned her head slowly, her neck feeling loose and rubbery. A man was sitting 2 stools away. He was nursing a glass of amber liquid, staring straight ahead. In the dim light, he looked like a noir detective or a hitman, He wore a black dress shirt with the top 2 buttons undone, revealing a hint of defined muscle. His profile was sharp, his jawline tense. "Who asked you?" Ifeoma slurred, narrowing her eyes. The man turned to look at her. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and incredibly tired. "You were speaking loud enough for the entire establishment to hear your tactical plans," he said, his voice deep and smooth like velvet dragged over gravel. Ifeoma huffed and turned back to her drink. "My ex is marrying a chaebol heiress tomorrow. He told me to come to prove I'm not bitter. He said I have no one to bring." "Sounds like a charming individual," the man said dryly. "He is," Ifeoma laughed bitterly. "He's the worst. He stole my youth. He stole my confidence. He even stole my poetry." She grabbed a napkin and a pen from her purse. "I write, you know. I'm a writer. But he said I'm just a ghost. A ghostwriter. Invisible." She started scribbling furiously on the napkin. Words poured out of her, fueled by alcohol and rage. "The autumn rain doesn't ask permission to fall. It just drowns the world in gray. Like you drowned the colors of my soul." And walked away without getting wet. She shoved the napkin toward the stranger. "Read that. Is that the work of a ghost?" The man hesitated, then reached out with long, elegant fingers to take the napkin. He read it silently. His expression didn't change, but his eyes lingered on the paper for a long time. When he looked back at her, the tiredness in his gaze seemed to have lifted slightly, replaced by curiosity. "It's good," he said softly. "It's honest." "Honest," Ifeoma scoffed. "Honesty gets you dumped. Lies get you a merger wedding." She slammed her hand on the counter. "I need a date. I need a date who looks better than him. Richer than him. Someone who will make him regret every single day he breathed air on this earth." She swiveled on her stool, facing the stranger fully. She looked him up and down. You look expensive." "Are you expensive?" The corner of the man's mouth twitched. "I've been told I have high maintenance costs." "Perfect," Ifeoma declared, pointing a shaking finger at his chest. "I'll hire you. I have, wait." She dug into her purse and pulled out a crumpled wad of cash and a punch card for a sandwich shop. "I have 80,001 and a free sub after 2 more visits. Is that enough for 2 hours of your time?" The man looked at the crumpled money, then at the sandwich card, and finally at Ifeoma's desperate, tear-streaked face. For a moment, she thought he was going to laugh at her, throw his drink in her face, and walk away. Instead, he slowly picked up the sandwich card. He examined it with the seriousness of a man inspecting a diamond. "I do enjoy a good sub," he said. Ifeoma blinked. "So, yes? You'll be my fake date? You have to act like you love me. You have to look at me like I'm the sun and the moon and the stars. Can you do that?" The man stood up. He was taller than she expected. He towered over her, blocking out the dim light of the bar. He placed the napkin with her poem carefully into his breast pocket, right over his heart. "I can act," he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, placing it on the bar. "Be ready at 10 a.m. I don't like to be late." He turned to leave, tossing a black credit card onto the counter for the bartender. "Her tab is on me. And get her a water. She has a big day tomorrow." As he walked out into the rain, Ifeoma squinted at the business card. The letters were swimming before her eyes. Kang Jin-woo. CO. The rest was blurry. Kang Jin-woo, she muttered, her head hitting the counter as sleep finally overtook her. Sounds like a fake name. The sun the next morning was a violent assault. Ifeoma woke up with a headache that felt like a construction crew was jackhammering behind her eyes. She groaned, rolling over in her small, messy bed, and buried her face in the pillow. The wedding. The memory hit her like a bucket of ice water. She sat up, gasping. The time on her phone read 9:15 a.m. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh no, no, no." She scrambled out of bed, tripping over a pile of books. She looked in the mirror and screamed. Her hair was a bird's nest, her eyes were puffy and red, and she had a pillow crease running down her cheek that looked like a scar. She looked like the Walking Dead. "I can't go," she panicked, pacing her tiny studio apartment. "I can't go like this. He'll win. He'll see me and he'll know I'm broken." Knock. 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 3 sharp, authoritative raps on her door. Ifeoma froze. It couldn't be him. The guy from the bar. He was a hallucination, right? A whiskey-induced fever dream. No billionaire agrees to go to a wedding for a sandwich coupon. She crept to the door and looked through the peephole. Standing in the hallway wasn't the man from the bar. It was a woman with a sleek bob, holding a garment bag, flanked by 2 men carrying heavy silver cases. Ifeoma opened the door a crack. "Hello? Miss Ifeoma," the woman said briskly, pushing the door open and stepping inside without an invitation. "I'm Director Choi. Mr. Kang sent us. We have 45 minutes to turn you into a weapon." "A weapon?" Ifeoma stammered, clutching her robe. "I thought we were going to a wedding." Director Choi unzipped the garment bag, revealing a dress that shimmered like liquid midnight. It was a deep, navy blue silk, elegant and understated but screaming of luxury. "In Mr. Kang's world, my dear," Choi said, snapping her fingers at the 2 men who immediately began setting up a lighted vanity mirror on Ifeoma's kitchen table. "A wedding is a battlefield. And you are going to be the nuclear option." "Wait," Ifeoma said, her brain struggling to catch up. "So he's real? Mr. Kang is real?" "Sit," Choi commanded, pushing Ifeoma into the chair. One man began working on her hair, his hands moving with blinding speed, while the other started applying serums and creams to her face. "Mr. Kang is very real," Choi said, pulling a pair of diamond drop earrings from a velvet box. "And he is very specific. He said, and I quote, make her look like she owns the place, but doesn't care enough to buy it. Do you understand the assignment?" Ifeoma stared at her reflection. The puffiness was disappearing under the skilled hands of the makeup artist. Her hair was being smoothed into cascading waves that looked effortless but probably took a degree in engineering to achieve. I think so," Ifeoma whispered. "Good," Choi said, applying a coat of blood-red lipstick to Ifeoma's lips. "Because the car is downstairs. And Mr. Kang does not wait." 30 minutes later, Ifeoma stood before the full-length mirror. She didn't recognize herself. The dress hugged her curves in ways she didn't know were possible, the dark blue contrasting beautifully with her pale skin. The makeup was sharp, accentuating her eyes, making them look fierce rather than sad. She looked powerful. She looked dangerous. "Perfect," Choi said, checking her watch. "Go. The wolf is waiting." "The wolf?" Ifeoma asked, turning to the door. "That's what they call him in the business world," Choi said with a cryptic smile. "Don't worry. Today, he's your wolf." Ifeoma walked down the stairs of her apartment building, her heart pounding in her chest. Parked right in front of the entrance, blocking the entire street, was a sleek, black Maybach. A chauffeur in a white uniform stood by the open rear door. Ifeoma took a breath and slid into the back seat. The interior smelled of leather and sandalwood. Sitting on the other side was Jin-woo. He was wearing a tuxedo. He had a tablet in his hand, scrolling through stock charts. He didn't look up immediately. "You're 2 minutes late," he said, his voice calm. Your people, the makeup." Ifeoma stuttered, feeling intimidated by the sheer aura of wealth radiating from him. Jin-woo finally turned to look at her. He stopped. His eyes swept over her, from the waves in her hair to the tips of her shoes. For a second, the stoic mask slipped, and Ifeoma saw a flash of something intense in his eyes. Recognition? Admiration? It was gone too fast to tell. Acceptable, he said, turning back to his tablet, though his grip on the device had tightened visibly. Driver, go. As the car purred into motion, gliding over the potholes that usually rattled Ifeoma's bicycle, she turned to him. Thank you. For the team. And the dress. I'll pay you back. I mean, I don't know how much a dress like this costs, but... Stop, Jin-woo said, cutting her off. He put the tablet down and looked at her. We have a deal. You provide the sandwich coupon. I provide the services. This includes the wardrobe. Consider it a uniform for the job. You're taking this very seriously for a fake date, Ifeoma said, studying his profile. Why? You don't even know me. You're a CEO. Shouldn't you be? I don't know, buying an island somewhere? Jin-woo looked out the window at the passing city. His jaw tightened. I know enough. I know what it's like to have someone steal your words and use them to build a lie. Ifeoma frowned. What do you mean? He turned back to her, his gaze piercing. We're arriving. From this moment on, you are not Ifeoma the ghostwriter. You are Ifeoma, the woman who captured the attention of Kang Jin-woo. You are confident. You are happy. And you are deeply in love with me. Can you do that? Ifeoma looked into his dark eyes. There was a challenge there, but also a strange sense of safety. For the first time in 24 hours, she didn't feel like a victim. I can do it, she said, lifting her chin. Good, Jin-woo said as the car slowed down in front of the cathedral. He reached out and took her hand. His palm was warm. Then let's go ruin a wedding. The car stopped. The door opened. And the flashes of the cameras blinded them instantly. The flashes erupted like a supernova, a blinding wall of white light that turned the midday sun into a dim candle. Ifeoma flinched instinctively, her hand tightening around Jin-woo's arm until her knuckles turned white. She had expected a few wedding photographers, perhaps a videographer documenting the arrival of the elite guests. She had not expected a media circus. Head up, Jin-woo murmured, his voice a low vibration against her shoulder. He didn't blink. He didn't shield his eyes. He walked into the storm of flashes with the casual indifference of a man walking through a light drizzle. Don't look at the cameras. Look at the destination. You belong here. They are lucky to catch a glimpse of you. Mr. Kang. Over here. Mr. Kang. President Kang. Is it true the merger with T-Corp is stalling? Who is the woman? Is this a new announcement? The questions were shouted from all sides, a cacophony of hungry voices. Ifeoma felt like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck, but Jin-woo was the driver. He guided her forward, his hand firm on the small of her back, a possessive, protective touch that burned through the silk of her dress. Why are they here? Ifeoma whispered, keeping her smile fixed and brittle as they ascended the stone steps of the cathedral. Is Minho this important? Jin-woo let out a short, dark chuckle. Your ex-boyfriend is a mid-level executive at a subsidiary. These cameras are here for the bride, the Hansei heiress. And now, he glanced sideways at the frenzied reporters, they are here because the CEO of Kang Industries just arrived with an unknown woman. Tomorrow, your face will be on every tabloid's front page. Are you ready for that? Ifeoma's step faltered. I didn't think. I just wanted to make him jealous. I didn't want to be famous. Too late, Jin-woo said, pushing open the inner doors of the church. The noise of the outside world was instantly severed, replaced by the hushed, reverent murmur of 300 wealthy guests. You started a fire, Ifeoma. Now we have to watch it burn. The vestibule was cool and smelled of incense. As their eyes adjusted to the dimmer light, Ifeoma saw him. Minho was standing near the entrance to the nave, greeting guests with the bride's parents. He looked frantic. He was sweating through his makeup, his smile twitching like a dying light bulb. He was shaking hands with a senator, but his eyes were darting around the room, likely looking for Ifeoma, hoping she hadn't shown up, hoping she had stayed in her hole. Then, he saw her. For a moment, time seemed to stretch. Ifeoma saw the recognition dawn on his face, the shock of seeing her, not in her usual oversized sweaters and messy bun, but in a dress that looked like it was woven from starlight and shadows. He took a step forward, his mouth opening to say her name. And then he saw who was holding her arm. Minho's face went from shocked to bloodless in a nanosecond. It was the face of a man who realizes he has brought a knife to a nuclear war. He abandoned the senator mid-sentence and practically stumbled over his own feet to reach them. Ifeoma, Minho breathed, his voice strangled. He looked at her, then at Jin-woo, then back at her, his eyes wide with disbelief and terror. And? President Kang. I didn't know you knew each other. Jin-woo looked down at Minho. He didn't offer a hand to shake. He didn't smile. He looked at Minho with the dispassionate curiosity of a biologist examining a particularly disappointing specimen under a microscope. There is a lot you don't know, Mr. Choi, Jin-woo said smoothly. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that made the air around them feel heavy. Ifeoma received an invitation. I assumed a +1 was implied for a woman of her stature. Of course, Minho stammered, wiping his palms on his white tuxedo pants. I mean, yes. Ifeoma didn't mention she was seeing anyone. Especially not, you. We value our privacy, Ifeoma said. The words came out before she could stop them. She was surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. Maybe it was the dress. Maybe it was the man standing beside her, radiating enough confidence for both of them. Jin-woo is very protective. Jin-woo turned his head to look at her, and for the first time a genuine smirk played on his lips. He squeezed her hand. That I am. Minho looked like he was going to be sick. Right. Well. Thank you for coming. My fiancé's father, Chairman Han, is inside. I'm sure he'd love to say hello, President Kang. I'm not here for business, Minho, Jin-woo said, using the ex's first name with a casual disrespect that made Minho flinch. I'm here to support my girlfriend. She tells me you two have a history. I wanted to see the man who was foolish enough to let her go. Minho turned a shade of red that clashed violently with the floral arrangements. He opened his mouth to respond, to defend himself, but he found no words. He was small. In the shadow of Jin-woo, he was microscopic. We'll find our seats, Jin-woo dismissed him, steering Ifeoma away before Minho could recover. As they walked past him, Ifeoma felt a surge of adrenaline so potent it made her dizzy. She had played this scene in her head 1,000 times, yelling at him, slapping him, throwing wine on him. But this? This silent dominance? This was so much better. Breathe, Jin-woo whispered as they entered the main hall. You're gripping my arm like you're trying to check my blood pressure. Did you see his face? Ifeoma whispered back, a hysterical giggle bubbling up in her throat. He looked like he was going to faint. He realized he made a mistake, Jin-woo said, his eyes scanning the crowd, analyzing threats, finding exits. Men like him operate on a simple hierarchy. He thought he was above you. Now he realizes he is beneath us. It shatters his worldview. They moved through the crowd, a shark and a siren navigating a sea of guppies. Heads turned. Whispers followed them like the wake of a ship. Ifeoma kept her head high, mimicking the posture of the man beside her. Well. Look what the cat dragged in. Or should I say, what the stray dog brought in. The voice was shrill and dripping with venom. Ifeoma froze. She knew that voice. It was a voice that had haunted her nightmares for 5 years. Standing near the front pew, blocking their path, was a woman in a lavender hanbok that cost more than a car. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it looked painful. Minho's mother. Mrs. Park. She looked Ifeoma up and down with a sneer of pure disgust. Ifeoma. I told Minho not to invite you. I said, don't invite the help, it confuses the guests. And look at you. Renting a dress? Trying to upstage the bride? It's pathetic, truly. Ifeoma felt the old shame creeping up her neck. Mrs. Park had always made her feel like dirt. She had criticized Ifeoma's family, her job, her clothes. She had once told Ifeoma that she would never be more than a placeholder until Minho found a real wife. Ifeoma opened her mouth to defend herself, but no sound came out. The conditioning of years of abuse was hard to break. Then, a shadow fell over Mrs. Park. Jin-woo stepped forward, placing himself partially between Ifeoma and the older woman. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, like a teacher dealing with a slow child. Mrs. Park, is it? Jin-woo asked. Mrs. Park blinked, her sneer faltering as she looked up at the towering man. She recognized him instantly. Everyone recognized the face of Kang Industries. Her demeanor shifted instantly from bully to sycophant. President Kang. Oh my, I didn't realize. Yes, I am Minho's mother. It is such an honor to have you. You have a smudge on your character, Jin-woo interrupted calmly. Mrs. Park touched her face frantically. What? Where? Not on your face, Jin-woo said, his voice dropping to a temperature that could freeze helium. On your manners. You just spoke to my partner with a tone that I find personally offensive. Ifeoma is not the help. She is the guest of honor as far as I am concerned. And as for the dress. He glanced at Ifeoma, his eyes softening for a fraction of a second before turning back to Mrs. Park with renewed steel. I commissioned this dress for her in Milan. It is a one-of-a-kind piece. Unlike the off-the-rack seasonal where I believe you are currently sporting. Mrs. Park gasped, clutching her lavender silk. It was, indeed, from a department store. A very expensive department store, but still, off the rack. To be called out by the most fashionable billionaire in Seoul was social suicide. I didn't mean. Mrs. Park stammered, shrinking back. Apologize, Jin-woo said. It wasn't a suggestion. I'm sorry, Mrs. Park squeaked, looking at the floor. Ifeoma, I apologize. Louder, Jin-woo commanded softly. The acoustics in here are tricky. I apologize, she said, her voice cracking. People were staring. Her face was a mask of humiliation. Accepted, Jin-woo said casually. Now, if you'll excuse us. We prefer to sit away from the draft. He guided Ifeoma past the stunned woman. Ifeoma was trembling, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from shock. She had never been defended like that. Never. Minho had always taken his mother's side, telling Ifeoma to be more respectful, to try harder to please her. You didn't have to do that, Ifeoma whispered as they found a spot near a pillar, slightly away from the main congregation. She's a monster, but... She's a bully, Jin-woo corrected, adjusting his cufflinks. Bullies only understand one language, force. If you bow to them, they step on your neck. If you stand over them, they lick your boots. Never bow, Ifeoma. Not for anyone. And certainly not for a woman wearing last season's pastels. Ifeoma looked at him. Really looked at him. Beneath the expensive suit and the cold exterior, there was a heat, a fierce loyalty that baffled her. Why, she asked, her voice quiet amidst the murmur of the crowd. Why are you doing all this? The contract was just to show up. You're going to war for me. Jin-woo turned to her. The church lights caught the sharp angles of his face. He reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her jawline for a heartbeat too long. Maybe I don't like seeing potential wasted, he said enigmatically. Or maybe I just hate bad poetry. And that woman's soul is a terrible haiku. Ifeoma laughed, a genuine, bubbling sound that made a few heads turn. For a second, she forgot about Minho. She forgot about the wedding. She was just a girl standing next to a boy who thought she was worth fighting for. Thank you, she said softly. Don't thank me yet, Jin-woo muttered, his eyes narrowing as he looked toward the sacristy door. The groom is coming back for round 2. He's persistent, I'll give him that. Minho was making a beeline for them again. He had ditched his mother and his in-laws. He looked agitated, his composure unraveling with every minute that Ifeoma stood there looking like a queen. Ifeoma, Minho said, stopping a few feet away. He ignored Jin-woo this time, focusing his frantic energy solely on her. Can I talk to you? Privately? She has nothing to say to you, Jin-woo said, stepping forward. I'm talking to her. Minho snapped, his voice rising. Ifeoma, please. Just for a minute. Over there, by the side altar. Please. For old time's sake. Ifeoma looked at Minho. She saw the desperation in his eyes. He wasn't scary anymore. He was just pathetic. It's okay, Ifeoma said to Jin-woo, placing a hand on his chest. She felt his heart beating, slow, steady, powerful. I'll give him a minute. I need closure. Jin-woo hesitated. He looked at Minho with a warning glare that could have peeled paint off the walls. 1 minute. If you aren't back, I'm coming to get you. Ifeoma walked with Minho to a secluded alcove near the side altar, away from the prying eyes of the guests. The air here was colder, smelling of stone and dampness. Minho turned to her, his hands twitching. You have to leave. Ifeoma blinked. Excuse me? You have to leave, Minho hissed. You can't be here with him. Do you know what you're doing? That's President Kang. He's a shark. He eats companies for breakfast. Why is he with you? Did you hire him? How much did it cost? Did you take out a loan? You think I paid him? Ifeoma crossed her arms. Maybe he just likes me, Minho. Is that so hard to believe? Yes. Minho exclaimed, too loudly. He lowered his voice, looking around nervously. Yes, it is. You're simple, Ifeoma. You like books and coffee and quiet nights. He likes power. He's using you. Or you're lying. Either way, it makes me look bad. Everyone is asking about you instead of the bride. Eunji is furious. Good, Ifeoma said coldly. I hope she is. You're being vindictive, Minho spat. Look, just go. I'll give you money. Is that what you want? I'll write you a check right now. Just take your rented boyfriend and get out before you embarrass yourself further. He reached into his pocket for his checkbook. The gesture was so insulting, so reductive, that Ifeoma felt a snap inside her chest. I don't want your money, Ifeoma said, her voice trembling with rage. I wanted an apology. I wanted you to admit that you used me. That you stole my life to build yours. I did what I had to do. Minho growled. He reached out and grabbed her upper arm, his fingers digging into her flesh. Stop making a scene, Ifeoma. You're ruining my day. Let go of me, Ifeoma said, pulling back. Not until you promise to leave. Minho tightened his grip. Suddenly, the air pressure in the alcove dropped. A shadow loomed over them, vast and terrifying. I believe, a voice said, sounding like the grinding of tectonic plates, she asked you to let go. Minho looked up. Jin-woo was there. He wasn't standing in a relaxed pose anymore. His body was coiled, his shoulders squared, his eyes dark voids of fury. This is a private conversation, Minho tried to bluster, though his voice squeaked. Jin-woo moved. It was a blur of motion. One moment he was standing 3 feet away, the next his hand was clamped around Minho's wrist, the one holding Ifeoma. He didn't wrench it away. He simply applied pressure. Minho gasped, his knees buckling as the bones in his wrist ground together. He released Ifeoma instantly. Jin-woo didn't let go of Minho. He leaned in close, his face inches from the groom's. Listen to me very carefully, Jin-woo whispered, and the menace in his tone was absolute. I don't care that it is your wedding day. I don't care that your in-laws are watching. If you touch her again, if you even look at her with anything other than total respect, I will destroy you. Minho whimpered, sweat pouring down his face. I won't just pull my funding, Jin-woo continued, his eyes boring into Minho's soul. I will buy your company. I will fire you. I will blacklist you from every industry in this country. I will make it so that you cannot get a job sweeping floors in a convenience store. Do you understand me? Yes, Minho gasped. Yes, I understand. Jin-woo released him with a shove. Minho stumbled back, cradling his wrist, looking at Jin-woo with pure horror. Get back to your altar, Jin-woo said, wiping his hand on a handkerchief as if he had touched something filthy. Go marry your bank account. And pray that I forget your face by tomorrow. Minho fled. He didn't walk, he ran back toward the main altar, disappearing into the crowd. Ifeoma stood there, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She looked at Jin-woo. He was adjusting his cuffs, his face returning to that mask of cool indifference, but his chest was rising and falling slightly faster than before. Are you hurt? He asked, not looking at her yet. No, Ifeoma whispered. She reached out and touched his arm. Jin-woo. He turned to her. The anger in his eyes evaporated the moment he saw her face. He won't bother you again, he said simply. You really would have done all that? Ifeoma asked. I never bluff, Jin-woo said. He offered her his arm again. Come. The music is starting. The ceremony is about to begin. We have front row seats to the farce. As the organ music swelled, filling the cathedral with a triumphant, mournful sound, Ifeoma took his arm. She felt different. The fear was gone. The sadness was gone. In its place was a strange, burning clarity. She wasn't just observing the wedding anymore. She was surviving it. And looking at the man beside her, this stranger who fought dragons for her, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, the universe had broken her heart so that he could be the one to help her put it back together. If you are enjoying this story and want to see the ultimate payback, make sure you are subscribed. You won't want to miss the twist coming up during the vows. It's going to be emotional. Ready? Jin-woo asked, leading her toward the pews. Ready, Ifeoma said. They walked out of the alcove just as the bride began her walk down the aisle. But Ifeoma wasn't looking at the bride. She was looking at the man beside her, wondering what other secrets he was hiding in the pockets of that expensive suit. The organ music swelled, a thunderous crescendo that vibrated through the wooden pews and into Ifeoma's bones. The congregation stood in unison, a rustle of expensive fabrics as the heavy doors at the back of the cathedral swung open once more. Eun-ji, the bride, appeared. She was a vision in white lace and diamonds, a walking advertisement for the Hansei Group's wealth. Her veil was long enough to cover a small car, and her bouquet was a cascade of rare orchids. She looked beautiful, undeniably so, but there was a stiffness to her smile, a practiced precision that made her look more like a porcelain doll than a woman in love. Ifeoma watched her walk down the aisle. She waited for the pang of jealousy, the stab of that should be me. But it didn't come. Instead, she felt a strange detachment, like she was watching a play she had already read the reviews for. Beside her, Jin-woo stood tall and impassive. He wasn't watching the bride. He was watching Minho at the altar. Minho was sweating profusely, his eyes darting toward Ifeoma and Jin-woo every few seconds as if expecting Jin-woo to pull out a bazooka. He looks like he's awaiting sentencing, not matrimony, Jin-woo whispered, leaning slightly toward Ifeoma. Ifeoma stifled a nervous giggle. He's terrified of you. Good, Jin-woo said. Fear is a powerful motivator for honesty. Though I doubt it will help him today. The bride reached the altar. Minho took her hand, his smile trembling. The priest, an elderly man with a voice like dry parchment, began the liturgy. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. The words washed over Ifeoma, familiar and meaningless. She found her gaze drifting to Jin-woo's hand, resting on the back of the pew in front of them. His fingers were long and elegant, devoid of rings. She wondered about him. Who was he, really? Why was he alone in a bar on a rainy night? Why did he carry such a heavy sadness in his eyes, even when he was being strong for her? You're staring, Jin-woo murmured, not turning his head. Ifeoma blushed, snapping her eyes forward. I was just admiring the cufflinks. They were a gift, he said softly. From my mother. She told me to wear them only on important occasions. Is this an important occasion? Ifeoma asked. Jin-woo turned his head then, his dark eyes locking onto hers. Meeting you was the occasion, Ifeoma. Her breath hitched. The air between them crackled with sudden, intense electricity. Before she could respond, the priest's voice cut through the moment. The couple has written their own vows. A murmur of approval went through the crowd. This was the part everyone loved. The personalized promises. The romance. Minho took a microphone. His hand was shaking so badly the mic rattled. He cleared his throat, looking at Eunji, but his eyes flickered once more to Ifeoma in the third row. Eunji, Minho began, his voice wavering. When I first met you, I knew my life had changed. He paused for effect. Ifeoma rolled her eyes. Standard opening. I used to think the world was black and white, Minho continued, gaining a little confidence. I walked through days that felt like gray static. But then... Ifeoma frowned. That phrase. Gray static. It sounded familiar. But then, Minho went on, looking deeply into Eunji's eyes, I looked at you, and I saw the autumn rain. Ifeoma froze. Her heart skipped a beat, then hammered against her ribs. I saw the autumn rain, Minho recited, his voice growing stronger, more performative. It doesn't ask permission to fall. It just drowns the world in gray, like you drowned the colors of my soul, and walked away without getting wet. The words hit Ifeoma like a physical slap. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. It wasn't a standard vow. It wasn't a generic poem. It was her poem. It was the poem she had written on the napkin last night. The poem she had written about him, about Minho, about how he had destroyed her. And he was using it. He was twisting her words of heartbreak, her words of accusation, and using them to pledge his love to another woman. He had stolen her pain and turned it into a prop for his performance. Tears, hot and angry, welled up in her eyes. It was the ultimate violation. He had taken everything from her, her time, her love, her confidence, and now he was taking her voice. You stole the colors, Minho continued, mistaking the audience's silence for awe. And I want to be drenched in you forever. The audacity. The sheer, unadulterated cruelty of it. Ifeoma started to shake. She couldn't breathe. The walls of the cathedral felt like they were closing in. She needed to leave. Now. She made a move to stand up, to run, but a hand clamped down on hers. Stay, Jin-woo commanded. His voice wasn't gentle this time. It was steel. I can't, Ifeoma choked out, tears spilling down her cheeks. Those are my words. He stole them. He's using them for her. I know, Jin-woo said. Ifeoma looked at him, confused through her blur of tears. You know? Jin-woo wasn't looking at her. He was staring at Minho with a look of such profound disgust that it was terrifying. His jaw was clenched so tight a muscle feathered in his cheek. I know, he repeated. Because I have the original in my pocket. He tapped his breast pocket. The napkin. Sit, Ifeoma, Jin-woo said, his voice dropping to a whisper that felt like a caress and a command all at once. Witness it. Let him say every stolen word. Let him build his castle on a foundation of theft. Because when it crumbles, you need to be here to see the dust settle. Why? Ifeoma sobbed quietly. Why does it matter? Jin-woo turned to her. His eyes were blazing. Because 5 years ago, I was in a hospital bed. The non sequitur made Ifeoma pause. What? I was in a car accident, Jin-woo said rapidly, keeping his voice low so only she could hear over Minho's droning voice. My fiancé died. I survived. I broke my back, my legs, and my will to live. I spent 6 months in a sterile white room, wishing I had died with her. Ifeoma stared at him, her own pain momentarily suspended by the raw confession. I couldn't sleep, Jin-woo continued. I couldn't eat. I was empty. Then, one day, a nurse left a literary magazine on my bedside table. I opened it to a random page. And I read a poem. He looked at her, his gaze intense, searching. It was about a bird with a broken wing that refused to stop singing, Jin-woo said. It was raw. It was painful. But it was hopeful. It was the first thing that made me feel something. Anything. I read it every day. I memorized it. I promised myself that if I ever walked again, I would find the person who wrote it and thank them for saving my life. Ifeoma's eyes widened. That poem. The Flightless. I wrote that. It was published in a small university journal years ago. Under a pseudonym. Jin-woo nodded. Amelia Hart. Your pen name. How? Last night, Jin-woo said. When you wrote on the napkin. The handwriting. The specific way you cross your T's, like a little dagger. And the phrasing. Drowned the colors of my soul. It's the same voice. I knew it the moment I read it. He reached out and wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. His touch was incredibly tender. I've been looking for you for 5 years, Ifeoma, he whispered. I hired investigators. I searched archives. I never found you. Until you walked up to me in a bar and asked me to ruin a wedding. Ifeoma felt the world tilting on its axis. You knew? Since last night? I suspected, Jin-woo corrected. But when he started reading that poem, your poem, I knew for sure. Only a thief sounds that hollow. Only the creator feels the pain you are feeling right now. Minho finished his vows. And so, I promise to love you, in the rain and in the sun. Forever. He lowered the microphone, looking pleased with himself. A few guests dabbed at their eyes, moved by the stolen words. Does anyone object to this union? The priest asked, his voice echoing in the silence. Speak now or forever hold your peace. The silence stretched. 1 second. 2 seconds. Jin-woo stood up. It wasn't a sudden movement. It was a rising, like a tide. He stood to his full height, buttoning his jacket with a sharp snap. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet church. The entire congregation gasped. Heads whipped around. Minho looked like he was about to have a stroke. President Kang? Minho squeaked. Jin-woo didn't look at Minho. He looked down at Ifeoma. He extended his hand to her. We're leaving, he said. Now? Ifeoma whispered, paralyzed. But, the objection. I'm not objecting to the marriage, Jin-woo said, his voice projecting clearly through the hall, though he wasn't shouting. I am objecting to the plagiarism. A ripple of shock went through the room. What? Minho stammered. Jin-woo turned to face the altar. He looked like a king addressing a peasant. Those vows, Jin-woo said coolly. They were beautiful. Poetic. Moving. It's a shame they belong to the woman sitting next to me. The room erupted. Whispers turned into shouts. Eunji turned to Minho, her eyes wide. Minho? What is he talking about? He's lying. Minho shouted, pointing a shaking finger. He's crazy. He's jealous. Jin-woo reached into his pocket and pulled out the napkin. He held it up. It was a small, flimsy piece of paper, but in his hand, it looked like a verdict. Written last night, Jin-woo said. In a bar. By Ifeoma. The woman you discarded. The woman whose talent you have been feeding off of for years. Tell me, Minho, have you ever had an original thought in your life? Or is your entire existence just a bad cover version of her brilliance? Minho opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at Eun-ji, but she had stepped away from him, disgust dawning on her face. Jin-woo turned back to Ifeoma. Ifeoma. Stand up. Ifeoma stood. Her legs were shaking, but she stood. He doesn't deserve those words, Jin-woo said, loud enough for everyone to hear. He took her hand. He doesn't deserve you. And frankly, this room doesn't deserve to hear another word you write. He leaned in close to her, his forehead resting against hers for a brief, intimate moment that made the rest of the world disappear. Write new ones with me, he whispered. Ifeoma looked at him. She saw the truth in his eyes. She saw the man who had been saved by her words, and the man who was now saving her with his actions. Okay, she whispered back. Jin-woo straightened up. He wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. Congratulations on the wedding, Jin-woo threw over his shoulder at the stunned couple. I'll be sending a bill for the consultation. And then, they walked. They walked down the center aisle, the same way they had come in. But this time, Ifeoma didn't look down. She looked up. She saw the shocked faces of the guests, the furious face of Mrs. Park, the devastated face of Minho. And she smiled. Not a fake smile. A real one. A smile of freedom. The heavy doors opened, and the sunlight hit them. It wasn't blinding anymore. It was warm. They walked down the steps to the waiting Maybach. The paparazzi were still there, sensing the drama. Mr. Kang. Mr. Kang. Did you just stop the wedding? Who is she? Is she the one? Jin-woo stopped before getting into the car. He turned to the cameras. He pulled Ifeoma to his side. Her name is Ifeoma, Jin-woo said to the press. She's a writer. Remember the name. You'll be seeing it on bestsellers very soon. He opened the door for her. Ifeoma slid inside. Jin-woo followed. The door slammed shut, sealing them in the quiet luxury of the car. The driver pulled away, leaving the chaos of the wedding behind them. Ifeoma let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for 5 years. She slumped back against the leather seat, turning to look at Jin-woo. He was loosening his tie. He looked relieved. You really did that, Ifeoma said. You actually did that. I told you, Jin-woo said, looking at her with a softness that made her heart ache. I hate bad poetry. And I hate thieves. Thank you, Ifeoma said, tears pricking her eyes again. For everything. For saving me. You saved me first, Jin-woo said quietly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the napkin again. He smoothed it out on his knee. 5 years ago. You saved me. He looked at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath hitch. Now, he said, I have a proposition for you. A proposition? Ifeoma asked. I have a story I want to tell, Jin-woo said. My story. It's complicated. It has tragedy, and business, and betrayal. But it needs a writer. A ghostwriter. But not a ghost. A partner. He held out his hand. Will you write it with me, Ifeoma? Ifeoma looked at his hand. Then she looked at his face. The face of the man who had seen her when she was invisible. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. I'm expensive, she warned. Jin-woo laughed. A real, deep laugh that filled the car. I can afford you. Ifeoma placed her hand in his. Then yes. Let's write a masterpiece. As the car sped toward the horizon, leaving the past in the rearview mirror, Ifeoma realized that for the first time in her life, she wasn't writing the ending of a sad story. She was writing the beginning of a new one. The aftermath of a social nuclear explosion is surprisingly quiet. At least, it is when you're watching it from the penthouse suite of the finest hotel in Seoul, sipping champagne that costs more than a mid-size sedan. 3 days had passed since the wedding. Or, as the internet was calling it, the Red Wedding of Cheongdam-dong. Ifeoma sat on the plush velvet sofa, scrolling through her phone. Her name was trending. Hashtag writer Ifeoma was the #3 hashtag in the country, right below hashtag President Kang and hashtag wedding crasher hero. Stop reading the comments, Jin-woo's voice drifted from the kitchen area. He walked in carrying 2 plates of something that smelled suspiciously like grilled cheese sandwiches. I can't help it, Ifeoma said, putting the phone down but not locking it. Someone wrote a 10-page analysis on my dress. They called it armor for the modern woman. And apparently, Minho stock options have plummeted. Deservedly so, Jin-woo said, setting the plate down in front of her. Eat. It's a comfort food classic. Though I did use artisanal sourdough and aged Gruyere. Ifeoma looked at the sandwich, then up at him. He was wearing casual clothes, a soft gray sweater and dark jeans. It was jarring to see the Wolf of Wall Street looking so domestic. So, Ifeoma started, taking a bite. It was delicious. What happens now? The wedding was cancelled. Eunji dumped him publicly. His mother is apparently in hiding in Jeju. Minho has been reassigned to a branch office in. I believe it's rural Mongolia, Jin-woo said casually, taking a seat opposite her. Hansei Group doesn't take kindly to embarrassment. And since I acquired a significant stake in his subsidiary yesterday morning, I made a strong recommendation regarding his career path. Ifeoma's eyes widened. You bought his company? I bought a controlling interest, Jin-woo corrected. It was a sound investment. The fact that it allowed me to banish your ex-boyfriend to the steps was merely a bonus. Ifeoma laughed, shaking her head. You are terrifying. I am efficient, Jin-woo countered, a small smile playing on his lips. But enough about him. He is the past. We have to discuss the future. He reached for a leather-bound folder on the coffee table and slid it toward her. What is this? Ifeoma asked. A contract, Jin-woo said. Ifeoma's heart sank slightly. Of course. It was business. It was always business. The partner talk in the car was about work. Ghostwriting his memoir. Right, she said, her voice a little flatter. For the book. The memoir. Read it, Jin-woo said. Ifeoma opened the folder. The first page wasn't a publishing contract. It was a deed. A deed to a loft apartment in Hanamdong. One with a balcony overlooking the river. The exact kind of apartment she had told Minho she wanted. She flipped the page. It was a bank statement for an account in her name. The balance had so many zeros she had to count them twice. Advance payment, Jin-woo explained. For your time. And for the emotional damages incurred during your previous employment as a girlfriend to an idiot. Ifeoma looked up, speechless. Jin-woo, I can't take this. This is too much. Turn to the last page, he said gently. Ifeoma flipped to the back. It was a single sheet of paper. Handwritten. To the author of The Flightless. I have spent 5 years looking for the voice that saved me. Now that I have found her, I have no intention of letting her go. I don't need a ghostwriter, Ifeoma. I know my own story. What I need is someone to help me write the next chapter. Will you have dinner with me? Not as a fake date. Not as a business partner. But as Ifeoma? Check 1. Yes. Yes, but I'm bringing my own pepper spray just in case. Ifeoma stared at the note. Tears blurred her vision again. She looked at Jin-woo. He looked nervous. The billionaire who could crush companies with a phone call was twisting his hands together, waiting for her answer. You really are a dork, aren't you? She said, sniffing. I have my moments, he admitted. So? Which box? Ifeoma picked up a pen from the table. She didn't check a box. Instead, she wrote a new option at the bottom. 10, yes, but only if you promise to never read poetry at a wedding ever again. She slid the folder back to him. Jin-woo read it and laughed. He reached across the table and took her hand. Deal. 6 months later. The launch party for Ifeoma's debut novel, The Vow, was the event of the season. The ballroom was packed with literary critics, celebrities, and yes, even a few of the people who had been at that wedding. Ifeoma stood on the stage, holding her book. She wore a red dress this time, bold, vibrant, alive. She wasn't the wounded bird anymore. She was a phoenix. She looked out at the crowd. In the front row, beaming with uncharacteristic pride, was Jin-woo. He held a copy of her book like it was a holy relic. Thank you all for coming, Ifeoma said into the microphone. Her voice was steady. This book is about betrayal. It's about heartbreak. But mostly, it's about finding your voice when someone tries to steal it. She looked directly at Jin-woo. I dedicated this book to someone special. Someone who taught me that words have power, but actions speak louder. Someone who stayed for the vows, even when they were lies, just so he could help me find the truth. Jin-woo's eyes shone. He raised his book in a silent toast. After the speech, Ifeoma was swarmed by fans. It took an hour to sign all the books. When the crowd finally thinned, she felt arms wrap around her waist from behind. Tired? Jin-woo whispered against her hair. Exhausted, Ifeoma smiled, leaning back into him. But happy. Good, he said. Because I have a surprise. Another apartment, she teased. I haven't even filled the first one yet. No, he said. He turned her around. I found something. He pulled a small, framed object from behind his back. It was the napkin. The original napkin from the bar, framed in museum-quality glass. I thought you might want this back, he said. The first draft of your masterpiece. Ifeoma touched the glass. The ink was smudged, the paper stained with whiskey rings. It was perfect. You kept it, she whispered. I keep everything that matters, Jin-woo said. He leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't a movie kiss. It was better. It was warm and real, and full of promises that he actually intended to keep. So, he said, pulling back slightly. What's the sequel about? Ifeoma smiled, a mischievous glint in her eyes. I was thinking, a romance. About a grumpy billionaire and a writer who drives him crazy. Jin-woo groaned playfully. Sounds unrealistic. We'll see, Ifeoma laughed. I have a very good muse. They walked out of the ballroom together, hand in hand, into the cool night air of Seoul. The cameras were there, of course. But this time Ifeoma didn't flinch. She smiled. Because she knew that no matter what the headlines said tomorrow, her story was finally, truly her own. Thank you for listening to this story. If Ifeoma's journey from heartbreak to triumph moved you, please give this video a thumbs up, it really helps the channel. And if you want more stories like this, romance, revenge, and everything in between, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. What would you have done if your ex used your poem in his vows? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Until next time, remember, don't let anyone steal your story. Write your own ending.